Sometimes a single job posting can tell you way more about a company's fears than any official press release ever could. Today, we're going to dig into a new job opening that tells a really fascinating and, frankly, a kind of worrying story about the true state of AI safety. So, you might have seen this pop up in the news recently. OpenAI posted a new role for a head of preparedness, but it wasn't just the fancy title that got everyone talking. No, it was this number. Over $500,000 a year. And that's not even counting the equity. I mean, that's not just a senior role. That's a massive statement. It tells you just how critical, and probably how difficult, this job is going to be. But the most telling detail? That didn't come from the job description. It came from the CEO himself. Sam Altman himself called the job stressful and said that whoever takes it will have to jump into the deep end pretty much immediately. And that makes you stop and think, right? Why would a job that's supposed to guarantee safety be designed to be so incredibly stressful from day one? And that's really the big question we're tackling in this explainer. Because according to some sharp analysts, this high-paying, super stressful job, it isn't just a job. It's a massive flashing signal of a much deeper structural problem. Okay, so to really understand this problem, we need to give it a name. Analysts have a term for it. They call it the governance gap. Or if you want to get formal, it's constitutional governance absence, CGA for short. So what on earth is CGA? Well, think of it like this. It's what happens when a company's safety depends entirely on people, on policies, on culture. All the soft stuff that can be bent or ignored or just changed when the pressure's on. The alternative is having safety rules literally built into the system itself, hard, non-overridable rules. When those built-in guardrails are missing, that's your governance gap. So this governance gap idea, it sounds a bit academic, right? But how does it actually show up in the real world? If a company is dealing with this, what are the symptoms? What should we be looking for?
Well, researchers point to three big ones. First, you're relying on one single person to be the center of all accountability. Second, you're always playing catch-up, trying to fix safety problems after they happen, instead of preventing them. And third, you've got a culture where safety has to fight for its life against product launches, and it doesn't always win.
Let's break down that first symptom. When you create one role, a head of preparedness, you're basically piling all this massive risk from cybersecurity to mental health onto one person's shoulders. They become what's called an apex operator, which is a fancy way of saying a single point of failure. What happens if they burn out, or they quit, or they just get overruled? The whole safety structure just crumbles. All right, next up is being reactive. The job posting basically admits that this role is needed because AI models are already causing real harm. They're finding security holes, they're affecting people's mental health. So the company isn't building a safety net for some far-off future, they are scrambling to weave one while people are already falling. It's a constant, exhausting game of catch-up. And that brings us to the third and maybe the most telling symptom of all. Jan Lick, who used to be a safety lead at OpenAI, put it perfectly. Safety culture and processes have taken a back seat to shiny products. You see, when safety is something that can be negotiated away to hit a launch date, it proves that it's not actually a fundamental part of the system. And here's another huge red flag. What happens when key people walk out the door? After some recent high-profile departures, OpenAI's AGI safety team was reportedly cut by nearly half. If your company gets dramatically less safe just because a few people quit, well, that's all the proof you need that safety was living in those people, not baked into the system's design. So when you look at all these symptoms together, they all point to this one fundamental conflict. It's a choice between relying on people versus relying on systems. And this is the absolute core of the two competing ways to think about governance. And this chart just lays it out, clear as day. On one side, you have program governance. That's the CGA problem. It's totally people-dependent, it's reactive, and its rules are negotiable. On the other side, you have the ideal constitutional governance. It's system-dependent, proactive, and its safety rules are totally non-negotiable. One is flexible and fragile, the other is rigid and robust. Here's a really simple way to think about it. Imagine a train. Program governance is like hiring a head of braking. This person has to stay awake, watch the speed, and manually pull a lever. But the train driver, who's obsessed with profit and getting to the station on time, can just scream at them to speed up and ignore them. Now, constitutional governance, that's when the train has automatic emergency brakes, hardwired directly into the wheels. If the train breaks the speed limit, the brakes slam on. Period. It doesn't matter what the driver wants. Safety is a property of the train, not the crew. Okay, so we've been talking about these two different models, and it might seem a little abstract, but why does this distinction matter so much in the real world? What are the actual stakes here? Let's go back to that $500,000 job posting. It's really easy to look at that and think, wow, okay, they're taking safety seriously. This is the solution. But if you look at it through this structural lens, you see the complete opposite. Hiring this person isn't the solution, it's a symptom. It's the big, expensive, stressful thing you have to do when you have a constitutional governance absence, when you need one heroic person to do the job that the system itself ought to be doing automatically. And that brings us right back to that word Sam Altman used, stressful. Think about it. In truly safe, well-designed systems like aviation or nuclear power, stress gets absorbed by the structure, by the hard rules, the checklists, the fail-safes. The moment a single job becomes stressful because one human has to personally weigh company profits against catastrophic risk, well, that's the moment you know the structure has already failed. So in the end, that $500,000 job posting isn't just looking for a candidate. It's unintentionally asking a much, much bigger question for all of us. As these AI systems get more and more powerful, can we ever truly make them safe if safety isn't a non-negotiable, hardwired part of their very foundation?